All right, so get this. You sent us some news on the Indian startup scene from Q3 2024. And man, the headlines are giving me a serious case of funding FOMO.
Yeah, definitely seeing some pretty eye-popping numbers.
That's putting it mildly. INC42 is waving around a $3.4 billion funding flag. But then Kredible Data chimes in with a cool $4.08 billion. Someone's got to be wrong, right? Or are they?
Well,
that's what we're diving into today. We're using your sources to get the real story.
And that's where it gets really interesting because it's not just about the total amount, it's about what's included, right?
Okay, so let's talk methodology.
Yeah.
It's the kind of word that makes your eyes glaze over, but it matters, right?
It really does, absolutely. Imagine this. A stealthy startup quietly secures a massive investment deal. No press release, no bragging rights just yet. INC42, with its focus on announced funding rounds, might miss that entirely.
So there's a whole world of underground funding happening that doesn't make it into every report. Sneaky, sneaky.
Exactly. Kredible Data, on the other hand, often factors in things like debt financing, so those are loans, not equity, which paints a different picture of a startup's financial health. And then they also track those secondary transactions where, existing shares get traded against something INC42 might not catch.
So it's like both reports are looking at the same ecosystem, but through different lenses.
Yeah.
One's zoomed in on specific types of funding, while the other one's taking a wider angle shot.
Exactly.
Makes you realize how important context is when you're comparing these reports.
Precisely. And that's why just focusing on the total funding amount can be misleading. I think the real insight lies in understanding the why behind the numbers.
Speaking of big numbers, there is one thing both reports agree on. Mega deals are raining down on the Indian startup scene like nobody's business.
Yeah.
We're talking headline-grabbing 9-figure investments here.
Absolutely. This isn't just a few lucky startups striking gold either. We're seeing a pattern of large investments across various sectors.
And some big names are in on the action.
Yeah.
Zepto, the grocery delivery app that's become like everyone's new best friend, just snagged a cool $340 million. Then there's DMI Finance, a financial services company, pulling in a hefty $334 million.
Yeah, these mega deals tell a story of investor confidence, especially in startups that have moved past the initial kind of risky stages and are showing real potential for growth and, importantly, returns.
And hold on to your hats because we've got not one, not two, but 3 new unicorns joining the party this quarter. MoneyView, the personal finance app helping you budget like a pro, just hit that magical $1 billion valuation.
They're joined by Rapido, the bike taxi service that's revolutionizing urban transportation, and Ather Energy, an electric scooter company, proving that sustainability is seriously cool. It's fascinating to see such diversity in the types of companies achieving unicorn status.
What's really interesting is that this matches the unicorn count from the first half of 2024.
What?
3 in the first 6 months and now another 3. It makes you wonder, is this pace sustainable? Or are we due for a unicorn slowdown?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is this a sign of sustained investor confidence in the Indian startup ecosystem, or are we in for a reality check?
I guess time will tell. But one thing that is crystal clear right now is the insane growth in late-stage funding. INC42 reported a 115% jump. That's like leveling up in the startup world.
Exactly. It's like graduating from the kiddie pool to the Olympic-sized swimming pool. Late-stage funding is where the big money flows, and it usually signifies a higher level of scrutiny from investors.
So they're not just throwing money at any shiny new app idea anymore.
Not quite. These investors are looking for companies with proven business models, a solid track record, and a clear path to profitability. Less risk, potentially bigger rewards.
Makes sense. But even within this late-stage landscape, there are clear winners. Kredible Data dug into the sector breakdown and found that fintech is the undisputed king, raking in a massive $1.15 billion this past quarter.
It's a testament to the growing demand for innovative financial solutions, particularly in emerging markets like India. Investors are recognizing this potential and placing their bets accordingly.
So it's not enough to just look at overall funding numbers. You have to understand the sector-specific trends to get the full picture.
Absolutely. It's like analyzing a sports league. You wouldn't just look at the overall league standings. You'd want to delve into individual team performance, player statistics, head-to-head records to get a deeper understanding of the dynamics at play.
All right, pop quiz time. When I say Indian startup hub, what city instantly comes to mind? I bet you can guess this one.
It's got to be Bengaluru, right?
Ding, ding, ding. You are absolutely right. Bengaluru, the Silicon Valley of India, is still the reigning champion, attracting a cool $1.38 billion, according to Kredible Data.
It's a hub for talent, innovation, and a thriving startup ecosystem, but it's not the only player in the game.
Oh, tell me more. Who else is giving Bengaluru a run for its money?
Keep your eye on the Delhi NCR region. They pulled in $1.3 billion this quarter. That healthy competition is great for the overall growth of the Indian startup ecosystem.
Competition fuels innovation, or so they say. But hold on, because we're not done with the plot twists yet. While all this funding is pouring in, there's another trend heating up. Mergers and acquisitions.
That's right. We're seeing a surge in M&A activity, almost double what we saw last quarter. This points to a maturing market where companies are consolidating their positions and looking to expand their reach.
It's like the game of Monopoly, but instead of buying properties, they're buying entire companies.
And just like in Monopoly, strategic acquisitions can be a game changer. Take OYO, for example. They're a hospitality giant, and they just acquired G6 Hospitality for a cool $525 million. That's a power move.
Talk about a mega merger. But amidst all this excitement, there's a side to the Indian startup scene that's often overshadowed by the success stories. We'll dive into that right after this. Okay, so we've got mega deals, unicorns galloping around, and companies merging like there's no tomorrow.
It's easy to get caught up in all the excitement, but, we also have to acknowledge the flip side of this coin, right?
Right, absolutely. While both INC42 and Kredible Data pointed to a slowdown in layoffs this quarter, the reality is that the startup world, it can be brutal. Not every venture is going to be a unicorn, and those early days are especially tough. Yeah, it's like that saying, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But in the startup world, it's more like a marathon, where you're also sprinting and dodging obstacles at the same time.
That's a great way to put it. And unfortunately, some startups do stumble even with funding. We saw 8 startups shutting down this quarter, including Coup and Wink Music.
Yeah.
Tough.
That's got to be a tough pill to swallow, both for the founders and the employees who poured their heart and soul into these ventures.
Absolutely. It highlights the inherent risk that comes with innovation, right? Not every idea is going to be a winner, and market conditions can change quickly.
So it's a constant balancing act between chasing growth and managing risk. Which makes you wonder, with all this funding pouring in, are we headed for a bubble? Or does the Indian startup ecosystem have strong enough fundamentals to support this kind of growth?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer. But looking at the data, there are definitely signs of a maturing ecosystem.
Okay, break it down for us. What are you seeing that makes you cautiously optimistic?
Well, for starters, the sheer volume and size of these mega deals tell us that investors see real long-term potential in India. They're not just chasing quick flips, they're betting on companies that are building innovative solutions for a massive market.
So it's not just hype, there's substance behind the buzz.
Exactly. And remember that increase in late-stage funding we talked about? That's a strong indicator of investor confidence. They're putting their money where their mouths are, backing companies that have proven themselves.
So instead of just looking at the number of unicorns, we should also be looking at the companies that are attracting those big late-stage investments.
Precisely. Those companies are often the ones setting the pace for innovation and shaping the future of their respective sectors.
This deep dive has been full of twists and turns. We've got conflicting data, mega deals, unicorn sightings, and even a few cautionary tales. It's a lot to process.
It really highlights the dynamic nature of the startup ecosystem, especially in a market as large and diverse as India. There's always something new happening, which makes it both exciting and challenging to navigate.
So for our listener who's trying to make sense of it all, what are the key takeaways, the things they should keep top of mind when they hear about the Indian startup scene?
First and foremost, context is king. Don't just focus on the headline numbers, dig a little deeper, understand what those numbers represent, where they come from, and what the potential biases might be.
Because as we discussed, $1 billion here is not the same as $1 billion there, depending on how you measure it.
Exactly. Second, remember that the startup world is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be winners and losers, booms and busts. Don't get too caught up in the hype cycle.
Yeah, all about balance.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, keep in mind that the Indian startup ecosystem is incredibly dynamic and constantly evolving. What's true today might not be true tomorrow.
Talk about a roller coaster. So no crystal ball predictions then.
I wouldn't dare, but I will say this. The Indian startup scene is full of potential, and it's definitely one to watch.
So while we can't predict the future of the Indian startup scene with like absolute certainty.
Right.
We can explore some potential scenarios, right? What are some of the factors that could shape, the next chapter for these innovative companies?
Yeah, that's the exciting part, isn't it? I think one thing to keep in mind is the global economic climate. If the global economy hits a rough patch, it could create a ripple effect, impacting funding and growth prospects for startups, even in a relatively resilient market like India.
Yeah. So external factors, those things outside of a startup's control, can play a big role.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a good reminder that even with the best team and a brilliant idea, timing and a bit of luck can make a difference.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that are hard to predict, regulatory changes within India could also have a significant impact on the startup ecosystem.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
New regulations could either be a catalyst for growth, creating a more supportive environment, or they could introduce hurdles that startups have to navigate. It's like that saying, the only constant is change.
Yeah.
But amidst all these uncertainties, there's one thing I keep coming back to, and that is the sheer scale and diversity of the Indian market.
It's massive.
It's huge.
Yeah. And with such a large population and a growing middle class, the demand for innovative products and services is only going to increase.
Precisely. And that's where I think, the biggest opportunity for Indian startups. They're uniquely positioned to understand the needs of this market and develop solutions that really resonate with Indian consumers.
So, while we can't say for sure whether the Indian startup scene is heading for a boom or a bubble,
right?
One thing's for sure, it's a fascinating story that's still being written.
Absolutely. And it's a story with the potential to reshape industries, disrupt traditional business models, and create opportunities not just within India, but on a global scale. That's an exciting thought. So, to our listener who's been on this deep dive with us, we've gone beyond the headlines, we've dug into the data, we've explored the highs and lows, the opportunities and challenges that come with, being part of a dynamic and rapidly evolving startup ecosystem.
Hopefully you're feeling a bit more informed and maybe even inspired to keep learning about this exciting space.
Who knows? Maybe you'll even be inspired to launch your own startup someday.
Now, wouldn't that be something?
Until then, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep your eyes peeled for those unicorns. They're out there changing the world, one innovative idea at a time.